and expert-level certification from Cisco, PMC, and vmware. And she will deliver the live board session. Just join me to welcome Luciana de Padua. Hello, Lu.
Sandra, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here with everybody. Thanks for joining our session today. And I'm going to use the live board to basically have a discussion and a conversation with you on how we can solve some of the challenges that we see every day in our data center and how we can optimize that and what kind of solution is available for us today and how we can, bridge the gap between legacy and new, have a smooth migration and take steps according to when we are ready to do that. So let me go ahead and share my board with you.
Okay, time is yours. Thank you so much for your time, Lu.
Yes. And give me 1 second, my board's gonna come up and you are going to see a blackboard to start with and then we'll start having a conversation. I'm also going to move everyone to my big monitor so I can see all of you at the same time. Feel free to, give me 1 second here. I'm gonna move the chat as well so I can see the chat. You feel free to ask questions at any time, okay? You do not have to wait until the end. If you want to ask the question in the local language as well, not a problem. The team here will help me and translate anything that might be needed. If you want to have your video on, feel free to have your video on as well. I love seeing people on the other side. So settle that. One last note. For me, I'm in Houston, Texas, so it's evening. And I've been drinking this juice that has a lot of caffeine. So if I start going too fast or if my English is not making sense, just let me know, okay? We'll make sure that between all of us, we can get an understanding. So settle that, right? The first thing that I want to think about is, being the owner of the business, having to make business decisions that impact, how we actually run the business on an everyday basis. Trying to think about either the fact that I could be the owner of the business or I'm working with my senior leadership, right? And if I think about what it is that, I want with the business. So let's say I'm the one making the decisions, right? Or I'm working with my senior leadership. And think about, if you are working with senior leadership, just think about your CFO, CEO, CIO, right? Maybe you are part of the board and making business decisions. And if that's the case, and I was to ask you, just summarize for me what it is that you're trying to do with the business, right? So if we think about what it is that we're trying to actually accomplish, well, a couple of things come to mind right away, right? One of the things that I really want is to have long-term success, right? If we think about our business, long-term success, I would also like to have all of my customers become fans. Right? So I know they are customers for life. I know they're coming back to us, right? And in order to do all of these, what I think most of the time is that I have ideas, right? I have ideas for the business and I want to turn them into service. This is pretty much what summarizes to me when I think about the business. Right? I have all these ideas and I want to turn them into services. So, for example, think about, I'm in the medical field, I have a medical clinic, and I basically want to create an app that allows me to monitor patients that are non-critical, like say, COVID patients that are non-critical from home, right? Simple idea. I just want to be able to monitor patients from home. That's basically what I want as the business. I want to turn that idea into a service. Maybe I'm in the financial, right? And I just want to be able to add a chat, a click to chat into our banking app, right? To be able to offer more services. On the end of the day, if we think about in the senior leadership, when I sit down with all of my members, or if I'm the owner of the business, what I'm trying to do is just get my ideas into services. Now, today, when we think about that, things have changed, of course. And when you think about what is driving those ideas into services, are basically digital services, right? Everything that we have today became a digital service. So if you think about digital services, right, today, what are we really talking about here? Okay, when we think about digital services, there's two ways that we can look at the services and how the services get deployed. And Mr. Ono mentioned a little bit to you, about Kubernetes. Well, what does that really mean to us in the business side of the house, right? It means that we basically have two choices to run our apps today. And think about this, everything is an app, right? You want to buy an airline ticket, it's an app. You want to order groceries, you use an app. You want to make an appointment with a doctor, you use an app. You want to do a banking transaction, you use an app. You want to chat with your friends, we use an app, right? We use an app for everything. So these digital services now can run in two manners, okay? We have what we call traditional apps, and we have what we call modern apps. And the traditional apps is what we've been running for the last 20 years, okay? Traditional apps are running on virtual machines. So think about, a single entity with multiple services. One entity, the virtual machine, multiple services. That's how the traditional app is running. Modern apps is a little bit different. How is that different? Modern apps basically leverage a different approach on the design of the application. That approach allows me to have multiple services, multiple entities. Developers realized there was an advantage to change the actual design of the application. Instead of using that monolithic design, one entity, multiple services, we went into multiple entities, multiple services. That's a microservice design. Why did we do that? Why did we change from monolithic to microservices? Because it's much easier to do patches, upgrades, and much more efficient when we're coding things for an application, right? So modern apps today, they run with basically a container environment. And Kubernetes is an orchestration tool that can be used, right? And we hear Kubernetes all the time. It became like the de facto standard in the field. Kubernetes is just an orchestration tool to manage that container environment. The applications are running in the container environment, right? So there's two things that we have to consider on the data center today. I need to be able to support my legacy stuff, my traditional stuff with virtual machines, and I need to be able to help my developers and support this new effort of redesigning and designing the application in a different manner. Maybe you're thinking, well, Lou, this is great, but I don't have a development team. I don't use anything that I'm building. I just buy things off the shelf. That is true, right? You could be saying, hey, you know what? I buy all of my applications already made. But guess what? All the vendors today are leveraging this new architecture for modern applications with Kubernetes. I'm going to give you one quick example that I think everybody can relate here in the call. So I'm pretty sure everybody knows and uses WhatsApp, right? You chat with your friends on WhatsApp, you send messages. Of course, WhatsApp was down, was a big deal, right? Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram. So obviously, big deal. Think about this. What if you do not want it to be affected with that, right? There is a service that is WhatsApp for Business. I don't know if you guys knew that, but WhatsApp for Business can be run by the enterprise, by the corporation, under the control of the corporate infrastructure. WhatsApp for Business is developed and built with containers. So if you wanted to run WhatsApp and have your employees leverage the WhatsApp for Business for chatting with corporate information on a secure way, right? You would need a container environment with Kubernetes to be able to run that, right? This is the simplest example that I can buy WhatsApp for Business. I don't have to build anything. But when I purchase, the vendor is going to tell me, hey, this new application has to run in a container environment. So today, when I start thinking about all of this, right, as the owner of the business, I'm thinking, okay, all I want is to get my ideas and turn them into services, right? So now I have to support these traditional applications that we already have running. I have to support these modern applications. I have several challenges that I start thinking, that are keeping me up at night, okay? So, and you can let me know as well if you want to post on the chat, what are some of the challenges that you see every day. But this is what I see a lot that, is keeping me up at night. So when I think about what's keeping me up at night, I see, one of the main things, obviously, being able to support these modern applications, right? That is really on the back of my mind all the time, because all I hear is, we need Kubernetes, we need modern applications, we need a new way to run this. And I'm trying to figure it out, okay, what it is that is available for us today to be able to support this. Another thing is, obviously coming from the infrastructure side of the house, if anything goes wrong, who gets blamed? The infrastructure, right? It doesn't matter what it is. If something goes wrong, is it the network, storage, compute, security team? We all get blamed when things don't work. If somebody runs out of ink on their printer, they're going to complain that there is a problem. They're going to call the IT infrastructure folks to come and do the support, right? So honestly, we've been blamed for everything that goes wrong in the enterprise, and we have to always prove that it is not our fault, right? So I would love to be able to have some visibility, not only just in the infrastructure, but also with the fact that a lot of times today, what we end up seeing is that we have workloads running on-prem, and we end up with workloads running on a cloud provider. I need to have visibility to that. And as part of the security team, what I would love to see is the fact that I need to know what they're doing with those applications in the cloud. We have compliance, we have regulations that we need to meet, right? So I'd love to have that visibility in the infrastructure. Another thing that it is a challenge for me today is the fact that we have all of these different infrastructure. And I'm trying to think about how can we consolidate some of that infrastructure. And again, folks, if you have anything that you want to tell me, hey Lou, this is something that is difficult for me, this is what's happening in my data center, feel free to post messages, and you can do it in English or your language, and then if needed, our team will translate back to us. So another detail that we see, that I see a lot with this infrastructure, is security, right? I'm going to put over here, security team is always concerned. And then the fact that we need a strategy around the workload. Okay, if I sit with my CFO, he's going to ask me, Lou, why are we spending X amount of dollars every month, every year with this cloud services? What's the justification? Why can our infrastructure deliver this? Why do you have to go get those services, right? and I need to justify that. So we need a strategy around the workload placement, right? So do I run in the cloud? Do I run on-prem? You know, where do I put the workload? What makes more sense to me? What makes more business sense to us, right? That's the idea. And folks, give me a second. I see a message on the chat. Let me take a quick look. Absolutely. So I totally agree with you. On the end of the day, it is a financial conversation for sure. And how do we actually leverage the legacy, the existing teams that we have, right? Totally agree. And what can we do to start thinking about a way to change how we think about infrastructure and how we consume the infrastructure, right? So definitely keeping us up at night. How do I do that bridge, right, between legacy and new, and slowly migrate? How do I use the same people that I have existing today and bring this up to the forefront of my solution? So let me go over with you. I'm going to do another board. This is a great point. Thanks for posting that as well, right? On the end of the day, right, it doesn't matter the technology. What it matters is what is the financial impact to my business? How am I running my business? And what is the technology going to do for me to be successful, for me to get long-term success, for me to get my ideas into services yesterday so I can compete in the market, right? That's really what it comes down to. So what I'm looking for is a solution that allows me to achieve my major business goals, right? And then, of course, with that, I will get into some technical requirements. But the idea here is what is available today for me so I can transition my data center, transform my data center to be able to support all of these digital services that we end up with, right? To be able to support all my remote workers, because we all know after the pandemic now, 90% of the workforce is working from home, right? We need to be able to support everyone. So how do we handle all of this, right? And that's the conversation that I want to have with you. This was just for us to get started. Is there anything else that you are thinking of that you want me to add to the board? And we can always come back, right, and add later, but just to think about, because I want to address those challenges with a solution as we go along. Also, folks, I forgot to tell you, these boards that I'm doing, I can save them, and so if anybody afterwards wants to have that for reference, definitely can share that with you, okay? So before I go forward, any questions for me so far? Is my English making sense? Can you give me a thumbs up on the Zoom if everything is okay so far? Perfect. And I'm looking at you here on the side, so that's great. Awesome. And thanks for your message on the chat as well. Great. So feel free to stop me at any point in time, ask questions, post questions on the chat. So let's think about this, okay? So we have to think about what it is that we have today, as you mentioned, right? The legacy, and where we're trying to go, what are we trying to achieve, and how we get there, right? So if we think about what we have, right? First of all, let's do this. So what do we have today on the on-prem side, right? Just think about my data center that I own. I own and manage data center. So when I think about on-prem, I have vSphere computing, in our data center, right? Most of us thinking about a traditional design. And if you think about that traditional design, right, I'm going to have a classic design of a data center with compute, storage, network, and security. That's what we see. And I'll get that up there for you as well. But think about what we talked, right? As a business, what do I want? I want digital services. I want to be able to run and support any workload. It doesn't matter how the developer created. It doesn't matter if I purchased from a particular vendor, right? It doesn't matter if it's what's up for business and it was purchased from a vendor, or if it is something I build in-house. Any workload is what I want to be able to support, right? So this is what I want. Now, what I have in my data center today, traditional data center, I have compute, and I have admin for that, right? And I have storage, and with storage, I also have an admin for that, okay? I have network, right? Think about all of the pillars that build our data center. I have network, got an admin for that. And of course, I have security, and I have my security team there, and I got an admin for that. Now, a lot of us, what happens, you might have one person that basically does everything, right? You have one admin here that manages the entire data center. Depending on the size of your data center, you might have one or two people, right, managing this data center. Now, what we have done in the past, which is this traditional design, does not work for us anymore today. Why? Because if you think about it, for the past 20 years, what did we tell infrastructure folks? Make it work, right? Stitch everything together and somehow make this possible, right? What is the problem with that for us today? Did it work in the past? First of all, yes, of course it did, right? But the requirements for the applications have changed. The drivers for the business, the whole digital service era, has changed how we actually need to leverage the infrastructure. And the problem here is what? This traditional design is what I call the Frankenstein. Okay? And why do I say the Frankenstein? Because literally, you stitch everything together and you hope it's going to work. And the problem with this is the time that it takes to provision things. Okay? Think about this. Your traditional provisioning in compute with this sphere, maybe an hour. Your traditional storage provisioning, maybe a day. The Frankenstein, right? And the problem with that, you know why I laugh? Is because in the infrastructure side, we have all these different things, and they all merge together, and you have to make it work, and you have to wait for the monster to start walking, right? That's basically what it comes down to. So the problem is this: I have to wait for it to work. I have to wait for things to be provisioned. Storage, maybe a day, okay, not so bad. But once you get to network and security, what happens a lot of the time? Well, you are waiting average for network 8 days. Average for security. I mean, security folks are going crazy with everything that's going on. I mean, ransomware attacks and everything else. They are going to look at every single thing you want to deploy, and it's going to go into a sandbox. And it's going to take 40 days. Okay? We already know that. 30 to 40 days average on the traditional infrastructure. Now tell me something. Do we have 30 to 40 days? No, we don't, right? And if you think about what happened, classic, right? And I saw that a lot here, you know, in the US, in the regions that I work with the most, South America, India, right? I'm originally from Brazil, so what happened was this. Infrastructure could not deliver, right? 40 days, 50 days, 60 days to get things done. I could just simply go to any cloud provider today, right? Any cloud provider, doesn't matter. Just pick one. And I can buy the service immediately by clicking on a button, right? I can purchase any kind of service I want. Infrastructure folks are not delivering, I can go to cloud. But what is the problem with that approach? There is a financial impact to the business. And we all know that cloud economics is not in our favor. So if you think about cloud economics, here is the problem. Because obviously I'm paying a premium for a service. So the question becomes what? What is available for me today that allows me to bring this cloud operational model home and then be able to provision the services as a function, compute as a function, storage as a function, network as a function, security as a function. So what is my actual solution? So if I'm looking for a solution that is going to act as a platform that will allow me to bring the cloud operational model home and leverage consumption, then my solution is going to be vxrail. And I'm going to explain in more details why and how and what can we leverage here, okay? So think about this. vxrail is a joint engineer solution of Dell and VMware, okay? So we have married together software and hardware, but not just that, because there is a lot about other vendor solutions out there. The differentiator here is brains of operation. And I'm going to get into the details on how that's going to work. But if you think about the vxrail appliance, okay, I basically have to get started right off the bat, compute with vSphere and storage with vSAN. That alone already allows me to consume two functions of my data center. I'm transforming my data center, compute and storage, the first two pillars of my data center, and I'm using and leveraging that with the vxrail appliance. But when you think about that, it's not just that, right? What makes vxrail different is the ability of having brains of operation. And for now, I'm just going to say that. I can explain in more details on another board so we don't get too crowded here. But think brains, okay? That is going to change how we leverage the married together joint solution. And how you saw earlier when we were looking at the videos for vxrail, right? One of the things that they mentioned is that this is the unique only solution curated in the market. So it is enhanced how VMware is running with the SAN. But not only that, okay? If you think about vSphere and vSAN are taking care of compute and storage, the first two pillars of my data center. What about network and security? That's where we bring on VMware Cloud Foundation. VMware Cloud Foundation on vxrail allows me to leverage compute, storage, network, and security. VMware Cloud Foundation brings vSphere, vSAN, NSX for network, and NSX for security. And a lot of people might be thinking, well, this is all great and everything, but I mean, that's kind of like a lot, right? So I want to go into details on what are the things that you can leverage, how you can get started. And a lot of people think that vxrail is too big, it's only for big enterprises, you know. But honestly, if you think about the flexibility on the design, we can actually start by adding a 2-node cluster, a 3-node cluster, a 4-node cluster to the existing vSphere environment. And then you will see the difference that we get in operation and day 2 operations when we can leverage vxrail. So let me talk a little bit about vxrail, talk about how it works, you know. And folks, I'm not gonna go super technical, right? Our session here today is just an overview to get everybody started. And of course, I will take any technical questions you may have. I will take any business questions you may have, right? Not a problem. But we do have dedicated, you know, technical sessions if you really want to get in the weeds and under the hood. But today, I just want to kind of give you the value proposition here, what it is that this is doing for me and for my business, and how this changed things. And I want to give you an example of a design that I did for a customer here in the US to showcase to you how this makes sense today. One more thing that I want to mention that's pretty big. Actually, I did not mention here on the first board, but I'm going to go back and add it, okay? What I want to add is a lot of times, one of the challenges that I have in the data center on the traditional design is when we have to patch and upgrade things, okay? I'm going to write here Patch Tuesday. I think everybody heard of that, right? So I'm not sure who decided that Tuesday was a good day for patching, but what happens every single time, folks? You start on a Tuesday, right? Everybody teases, everybody says Tuesday is Patch Tuesday, Friday is read-only, right? Read-only Friday. What happens every single time? You start with the patch on Tuesday. By Thursday, you are in trouble. By Friday, you have 4 different vendors on a call. Everybody's fighting with everybody and blaming the other, and you already know you're going to miss the weekend. Forget about, you know, going out to dinner on Saturday or enjoying the kids playing around. That's it. The worst part is Friday night you're working, Saturday you're working, and Sunday is the worst day ever because that's what we call the rollback, because it didn't work. Something went wrong and you have to roll back to what you had on Tuesday before the patch. Any kind of patch upgrade becomes a very complex step, mainly when we have a Frankenstein design and I have all these different software, hardware, everything running together, right? So if you think about it, that becomes a challenge. And with vxrail, there is something that is pretty awesome, which is called lifecycle management. This here, for me, is one of the biggest takeaways. What is lifecycle management doing? Lifecycle management is taking away the pain of the patch Tuesday. Dell and VMware, and you saw in the video, over 100 engineers, over 25,000 hours of testing before a patch comes out, a patch is going to be released. All of that pain is handled by Dell and VMware. Everything is done. And with vxrail, when you want to do that upgrade, that patch, what you do is you literally push a button and you know it's going to work. And you know your Patch Tuesday is only Patch Tuesday and not, you know, an entire week of work that needs to be rolled back. and not 4 calls for 4 different vendors, that we have to deal with. So when you think about, right, the things that take the most amount of time in the data center, and even if I was a small shop with a single admin, I still have to handle all that, right? So those upgrades, when you have a lot of different hardware, software, everything together becomes a nightmare. With vxrail, we made that easy, right? So the idea is to literally have one push button upgrade. But I don't even have to worry about, because I don't have, as an engineer, I don't have to go look at the matrix to see what works with what version and how and all, that's like hours on end when you have a bunch of different things. Now, I'm literally bringing operational costs down, because my admins just go in there, push that button, the upgrade will not take but an hour or less, depending on what it is that you're changing. And then you're done, and you'll know it's gonna work. So there is no downtime on my data center. We all have been there, right? Where you actually try to do an upgrade and everything goes to, crazy, and the next thing you know, we're down. Infrastructure is down. Everybody's screaming. Everybody's pulling their hair. Applications are not working. We have to go to backup to get a restore in another data center. A whole nightmare, right? So we're trying to avoid all that. And on the end of the day, to the business, what does that mean? Minimize my operational costs, my day 2 operations, right? I can do more with the admins I have. I can give them the weekend back, right? Do you think anyone loves to work on a Friday night, on a Saturday morning, right? I mean, no. I would love to be in IT and still have a weekend, right? This is what we're trying to do here with vxrail. So let me talk a little bit more about vxrail, how it's working, what is the cluster, how does that look like, and also talk about the difference between HCI and vxrail, like what it is that we have on a hyperconverged infrastructure versus vxrail, okay? So we can get into a couple of more details that might be pretty interesting for you. Before I go forward, folks, any questions for me so far? How is the English? Is it still making sense? Can you give me a thumbs up on the Zoom if everything is okay so far? Thank you. I see a couple thumbs up come up. Okay, great. Perfect. Thank you. So, let's do this. Let's talk about what is the platform approach, okay? Because I think that's the big difference. When we think about a platform approach, right? Let me just put a reminder here so if later you're looking at this board, you're gonna remember. So, what is the platform approach? So thinking about, basically how we actually turn the services into a consumption model, right? So when I think about the platform approach, what are the things that we have today? Like what's out there, right? So we have HCI and we have vxrail. And what is the difference here? Okay, so think about HCI. I have compute plus storage running in the same box, but there is no break. Okay, so if you think about a Dell vSAN ready node, okay, there are cases that you want to leverage that design solution. But if I truly want to get the consumption model, what do we have available today? vxrail. With vxrail, what do we get? I do have the compute to get started, plus the storage, plus the brains that I was mentioning to you. And I'm going to explain now how that works, okay? Just give you an idea. And again, I'm not going to get all technical. I can take any technical questions you may have, but we do have like deep dive technical sessions if you're interested. For now, let's just understand the big picture, because we need to make a business decision, right? So if we think about this, let's just say that I have a couple of nodes. Okay, so a couple of appliance nodes. Let me just draw them up here so we can talk about it. So think about, a small cluster. Think about adding this cluster to the existing vCenter on your data center. Okay? I want to try vxrail. I want to see how it works. I want to see if I like it. Okay? I want to do a POC. Let me see, I have a bunch of different things going on right now. I even have some DELL vSAN writing nodes. I want to try vxrail. I want to see what's the difference really in action. Okay? Let's say we do that. If we do that with vxrail, I get, right off the bat, major components with the compute and vSAN with storage. Now, we do have other duties like data protection and so on. I'm not even going to go there. I'm just going to keep it simple. There is several things that we can leverage. But when we think about with vSphere and vSAN, I'm thinking about my consumption model of compute and storage to begin with, right? And when we add this cluster to our existing data center, right? So it's going to be under the vCenter we already have. This is going to give me the ability to test drive vxrail and see how much I like it. I want to know if it's true what we said about the one button upgrade. Actually, I want to see how long does it take, because I heard there is a lot of automation, right? How long does it take for me to add another vxrail node to the cluster? I want to find out some details, right? So if we start looking at this is my vxrail cluster. It's under my existing vCenter. In order to add a node to the existing cluster, 15 minutes, okay? That is the power of automation. When you think about brains, okay, think about automation. In every vxrail cluster that I build, we are going to have a special manager. And this is just to give you an idea. Again, I'm not going to get super technical here, but there is a vxrail manager that runs in the cluster. And this is what is empowering me to actually get that one button upgrade, to actually automate my infrastructure to be able to add nodes and scale that out, okay? And do several other cool things that we can talk about. But to me, right, if I'm looking at this, what is the advantage for my business to be able to have an automated fashion for my infrastructure provisioning? When I think about infrastructure provisioning, right, with the Frankenstein model, what did we say? The Frankenstein model takes 40 days to get anything done. Okay, that's the reality. That is the best we can do. Maybe 30 days if your guys are fast. I'm talking about minutes with vxrail, okay? And not only that, if you think about your admin that you already have, right? That admin knows vSphere and knows vSAN. That is based on literally the vCenter that we've been using for 20 years. That same admin can manage the vxrail cluster, can intuitively use the manager, right? And not only that, With this, I am simplifying my operational model. So if you think about simplicity, right, I literally can simplify my ops model. And not only that, you want to try Kubernetes? You can actually run VMware Tanzu on this cluster. Okay? Tanzu is the solution that allows me to run Kubernetes in vSphere and with components running in vSphere in the hypervisor, just like we do, with everything else that VMware did. And this gives me the ability, on the end of the day, to do one thing: support modern applications, which is what was one of the requests right on the beginning, right? I need to be able to support these digital services. I want to run WhatsApp for business. I'm going to put it right here in this cluster. I want to do VDI. I want to put it right here in this cluster. I want to do any workload, okay? It doesn't matter. And of course, folks, we do have different versions of the vxrail. If you needed something more rugged, I live in Texas, as I mentioned to you, in Houston. Here we have a lot of the oil rigs, right? And so we use the 2-node vxrail on the oil rig as part of the design of a cluster design. Just a 2-node on the actual oil rig, the rugged one, right? So I don't need to get into all those details, but the thing is, I can accomplish my mission and justify to my board why I'm investing in this technology. What do I gain? 72% lower operational costs. Well, I'll put it over here. Lower ops costs on the end of the day. The whole nightmare of Patch Tuesday is gone. I can add and scale this out within 15 minutes. Give me the Rail platform, and I can have that working in 15 minutes. I can add it to the cluster and have compute and storage available for consumption immediately. 15 minutes, that's nothing. And of course, when something does go wrong, okay, because eventually something could happen, I am going to call one support. I have one vendor to call, and that's Dell. And that's my support. And the engineers in the team that do the support for the vxrail both work with Dell and VMware, understand the hardware and the software, how they're married together, and have been trained both with the platform itself. So if you think about it, I don't have to wait for somebody. I don't have to get another vendor in the call. I don't have to have 4 vendors on a Friday afternoon. I call one support, and every engineer, no matter what level, is going to be fully trained on the vxrail, VMware, and Dell together. That to me right there is a huge advantage. The fact that I can automate all of those services that take me days to get things provisioned, okay, is a big advantage. And the automation is key. And if I need to support Kubernetes, I can do that right here. Now, this is all great and dandy. You probably think, okay, well, this is pretty cool. I can try it. I can get, 2 nodes, 3 nodes, add to my existing vCenter, start moving some workloads to the new infrastructure. Maybe I want to start greenfield. I want to build a whole separate cluster. That's fine. I want to build another vCenter. That's fine, right? You're probably thinking, how does that help me get to the hybrid cloud world, right? Mr. Onno was talking about, okay, we're going to use private, we're going to use public. There's, different approaches. How do I get to that, right? So let me show you that on the next board, and also talk a little about how do I get vxrail, right? What's available for me to have vxrail on my data center today? How is all that, folks? Life is good. All right. Perfect. Thanks for the thumbs up. Perfect. So let me just show you a couple more things here to kind of bring it together. And then we can talk about the consumption model and a little bit what can you leverage and use. And again, if you have questions, feel free to post them in the local language. The team will let me know. If you want to do it in English, if you want to open your mic and just talk to us, that would be great as well. I love getting questions, so just let us know what you're thinking. And if you're thinking, okay, well, how can I leverage this in my data center today, right? What can this bring to me? I want to tell you one more thing, okay, before we go forward, because this is kind of important. A lot of people ask about, okay, Luke, Dell has vCAN-ready nodes and Dell has vxrail, right? That is true. What is the difference for me as a business? When I'm looking at this, and I'm talking to my account manager, I see that there's two solutions. What makes more sense to me? So think about this. The vCAN-ready node is like building a car. Think about if you had a garage and you get all of the parts for the car, and you get the engine, and you get the glass, and you get the door, and you start putting it all together, okay? Let's say that you're missing the solenoid. Solenoid didn't arrive. Well, we cannot put it together. You're waiting. You might wait a week or two. Let's say that you have a problem. You gotta call all your friends that are mechanics to now come in and try to help you figure it out. Eventually, do you have a car built? Eventually you do, right? And you have that car ready to run, yes. But today, when you think about it, if I just want to go to the dealership and buy the car and tell them, give me the keys, I just want to drive. I don't want to build a car. I don't want to have a garage. I just want to simply drive. That's vxrail. vxrail is a turnkey solution. It's ready to go. And all of the life cycle management that we mentioned allows you to not have to worry about the Patch Tuesday. Now, with the vCAN-ready node, you will have to do the Patch Tuesday yourself. Does it work? It does, but it does take more time. More time of your engineers, more operational costs on the end of the day, right? Somebody has to do the work. So, are there use cases where we leverage vCAN-ready node? Absolutely. Are there use cases where we leverage vxrail? Absolutely. How do I decide what is best for me? We need to look at your infrastructure and what it is that you're trying to do. When we look at the infrastructure, your data center, and we can see what are the major business goals and what you're trying to do, we can decide what will work best. Both solutions are available today, and we can decide what makes the most sense for your business. So, said that, there is one more thing that I want to talk about. So, when you think about your on-prem data center, okay, so let's just think about that for a second. I'm going to do an on-prem data center, and then we'll talk about how does that get into the hybrid cloud, okay? So this is my on-prem data center, and let's just say that I started with a small 4-node cluster. Okay, so think about, this is my vxrail. You could have legacy in your data center, this is just a representation of the new cluster that we just got. So this is vxrail, okay? And think about this, right? I'm even gonna draw a legacy in here, so we have both, okay? So this is a new cluster. These are my new toys. So vxrail cluster. I have a vCenter here, and this was deployed with a vCenter. I have some legacy here. Let's just put legacy over here. Okay? And I am now slowly bridging the gap and migrating some of the legacy to the new. Okay? And of course, the legacy is also part of the same vCenter. Okay? Now, why do you care about this? Because we can start small and we can grow. This is the on-prem data center, and with just vxrail, we have vSphere plus vSAN, right? Now, think about a cloud provider today. Okay? What are cloud providers doing today? So think about a cloud provider. Pick any cloud provider. Okay? What cloud providers are doing today is offering the VMware stack as a service. So if you think about what cloud providers do under the hood, okay, they have VCF as a service. So they have vSphere, vSAN, NSX for network, and NSX for security. And of course, you buy all of that as a service, right? And you can run your workloads in a cloud provider any point in time. If you run the VMware stack on your on-prem data center, which is what we're doing here, what makes the most sense to you? To find a cloud provider that also runs the VMware stack. Why is that? Because if your cloud provider is running the same stack as you, your data center is going to basically use and leverage the cloud as an extension of on-prem. And if you think about it, okay, today, if you want to literally bring the cloud operational model home, right, which is the goal, I'll put it right here, run cloud ops model at home. Right? This is what I want. Then we have VCF on vxrail. What do? You basically can either bring a new cluster or leverage the existing cluster and migrate. What's going to happen here, right? To run VCF, VMware Cloud Foundation on vxrail, we need 4 nodes minimum, okay? 4 appliances, 4 nodes to get started. So, once you have the 4, we can run VMware Cloud Foundation. And with VMware Cloud Foundation, we also have one more thing that's called the vRealize suite. It comes with VMware Cloud Foundation. And that gives me vRealize automation. vRealize automation allows me to decide when I run things in the cloud and when I run them on-prem. There is something called business logic. What makes most financial sense to me? Do I want to run it on-prem? Do I want to bring it to the cloud? Do I want to go back and forth 100 times? It doesn't matter. One of the things that we were very concerned on the beginning was security. I have all these workloads running in the cloud and I have no idea what they're doing. With this model, I have NSX, 6, 6 on-prem, 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 and I have universal policy. Universal security posture. I don't care if the admin got the workload and moved it back and forth to the cloud 100 billion times a day. Same exact policies on-prem and off-prem. Folks, I had a customer here in the US that got fined $300,000 for PHI compliance. Patient information that was running on containers on a cloud provider without the proper PHI and HIPAA policy. $300,000 on that. It was a fine. Got audit, got a fine. One customer example for you, so you can relate. I have a company here in the US, considered to be a small customer, small to mid-sized customer. There was one IT director and 2 admins. They had an average of about 30 to 40 workloads running on the cloud provider. They did not have a data center. Everything they had was on a cloud provider. They were born in the cloud and they were in the cloud. Today, the average customers, 6% born in the cloud. 16% is still on-prem only. 77% is doing what I'm showing on the board, hybrid design. This is a hybrid design. Okay, I'll put it over here on the corner. This is a hybrid design. Right? And this customer, and I'm going to tell you numbers because I want everybody to have an idea, okay, on how this works for this customer. So a small to mid-sized customer, 1 IT director, 2 admins, about 40 workloads. Critical. The business, they do delivery. They have a bunch of trucks and they do box delivery. Okay? So think about this. 2 of their SQL databases blew up. They only had support from the cloud provider from 8 to 5. They were paying for the cheapest possible service. And they were down for 3 days. The financial impact of having those truck drivers sitting on the side of the road without being able to deliver was huge. The customer figured out and said, you know what, we need to go to a bigger cloud provider. They were using a local provider and they asked us to help them move to AWS. So we talked to the customer and we said, but wait a minute. You have about 30 to 40 workloads. What if we bring the cloud operational model home and run VCF on vxrail with 4 nodes? That's all you need. 4 nodes on a co-location. Folks, this customer, in particular with the cloud provider they had, it was a local cloud provider on the state of Alabama here in the US. They were spending an average based on consumption, an average between $22,000 to $30,000 a month, US dollars. By bringing the whole thing home, okay, and running everything themselves on a co-location with all of the promotions that VMware and Dell have today together for you to have vxrail available, their cost went down to an average between $10,000 to $12,000 a month. Over 50% savings by bringing their workloads home. So, 1, most people think that vxrail is too big, only big enterprise customers. Now, I can run vxrail with 3 nodes, 4 nodes, right? I can bring VMware Cloud Foundation into the picture, and I can literally have the entire operational stack of a cloud provider on my private cloud in my own data center. I can support any workload. I can support Tanzu. I can support Kubernetes. I can support voice, video, machine learning, you name it. It doesn't matter what the workload is. And honestly, we don't care. We support all of them. What is it that you need to run on your business? We can do it, right? So now we just have to think about what is the strategy? How can I get vxrail, right? You can follow the traditional model with KPAX and just invest, or you can do a consumption model with, metered service. You can, depending on your region and country, there is a couple of different options for the consumption, and you can leverage that as well, right? So of course, if you have questions about all that, talk to your Dell team. They can guide you through that. We can come in, we can look at your data center, we can look at your business goals, we can figure it out what it is that you're trying to accomplish, create a strategy around that, and figure out how to go from the Frankenstein design to a modern data center platform approach design, and how to migrate at your own time. Because all of this can be added step by step as you please, right? It's not like I have to trash everything I have and build all new, right? We can go step by step. So there are several ways of handling this, and different ways according to your requirements, your business requirements, your technical requirements. I know I talked forever now. Let me take a break. Folks, how is all that? Does this make sense to you? Do you have questions for me?
Oke, kepada Bapak Ibu dan juga rekan-rekan yang sudah hadir di sini, saya ingatkan kembali jika ada pertanyaan silahkan untuk ditanyakan di kolom chat yang telah disediakan. Tidak perlu menggunakan bahasa Indonesia, Bapak Ibu bisa juga tidak perlu menggunakan bahasa Inggris, tapi bisa juga menggunakan bahasa Indonesia. Jadi apapun itu, ada mungkin tadi yang kurang jelas ingin diulangi kembali atau bagaimana, silahkan untuk di drop di kolom chat yang telah disediakan, atau jika ingin ngobrol langsung dengan lu ataupun Pak Ono, silahkan juga untuk mengetik di kolom chat, minta izin untuk di unmute. Seperti itu nanti kita akan berikan kesempatan untuk kita bisa ngobrol bareng, diskusi mendalam terkait dengan tema kita pada hari ini yang sangat menarik tentunya. And Lu, is it all your presentation or there is another?
Yes, this is it, what I had planned for today, but if anybody has questions or would like for me to discuss anything else, I'm definitely available. Just let me know.
Okay. Lu, thank you so much for your presentation. Honestly, this is my first time to see the presentation like chalkboard live, and this is so good. Your concept, you described about the analogy, it's very great. And I think in Texas now is 10:30 p.m., right?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate being here, really appreciate being invited to do this with you guys. This is great. Thank you everybody for joining and watching the presentation as well. And I can save the boards and we can share them with you if you're interested. I'll stop the share now and I'll let Sandra take over. And I'm going to put my email in the chat as well in case anybody has questions later or think about anything that you might be wondering afterwards. You can always email us and I'll share my email as well.
Okay, so you can share your email in the chat box. Untuk Bapak Ibu dan juga rekan-rekan yang ingin mendapatkan presentasi tentunya dari Lu, ini bisa hubungi email yang tertera. Dan mungkin sedikit juga tadi saya I will resume your presentation a little bit. Tadi kita juga sudah diajak ya Bapak Ibu dan juga rekan-rekan ini melihat dalam sisi senior leadership ini goalsnya apa nih, long term success, kemudian juga customer di sini, bagaimana merubah IDS ini into services ya tentunya dengan menggunakan digital services. Yang tadi kita sudah dijelaskan konsepnya dari the two, yaitu traditional apps and modern apps. Untuk modern apps sendiri tentunya ini berbeda dengan traditional apps ya Bapak Ibu dan juga rekan-rekan, karena tentunya lebih multiple services, multiple entities ya. And there is several challenges yang kita hadapi Bapak Ibu dan juga masalah dalam hal what keep me up night ya, karena pekerjaan ini harus dilihatin terus, dipantau terus, kemudian juga dalam hal modern app support, Kemudian juga kalau misalnya if there is a problem, we all get vmware. Tadi Miss Lu sudah jelaskan terkait visibility infrastructure-nya, consolidation infrastructure, and of course about security. Dan Bapak Ibu dan juga rekan-rekan, setelah tadi kita tahu ya terkait dengan tantangan, kita juga diajak untuk berpikir nih ya terkait what we have and what we want. Nah, tadi juga kita sudah bahas terkait dengan digital services anywhere cloud ya Bapak Ibu dan juga rekan-rekan. Dan the problem is Miss Lu say is economic ya. Lalu apa yang harus dilakukan ya tadi Miss Lu sudah jelaskan tentunya yaitu we must marry together joint solution software and hardware, vxrail, DELL plus vmware. So tadi kita sudah bahas Bapak Ibu dan juga rekan-rekan terkait perbedaannya nih DELL Visan Ready Note and about the vxrail yang tentunya tadi kita sudah bahas. Dan semoga pemaparan yang tadi sudah diberikan dengan the way Miss Lu menjelaskan yang sangat menarik, bahkan untuk saya ya yang seorang bukan dari base IT saja kayak wow ini sangat mudah dimahami ya. Jadi dari segala hal yang kompleks ini disimpulkan oleh Miss Lu. Dan tentunya untuk Bapak Ibu dan juga rekan-rekan di sini jika ingin mendapatkan presentasi dari Miss Lu tentunya bisa untuk email yang sudah di-share di kolom chat yaitu di luciana.depadu@hydra1303.com. Di sini there is a comment from Mr. Teguh, professional presentation, tactical and simplified maintenance inspiring. And then dari Pak Ono juga. Pak Ono jika ingin ngobrol atau tanya-tanya, tadi saya sempat lihat di kolom chat Pak Ono juga sudah sempat tanya ke Lu, mungkin sudah ditegaskan juga di presentasinya ya. Maybe I wanna ask Lu a question ya. Lu, what is the function of the DELL vxrail manager? The function of DELL vxrail manager.
Perfect. So the DELL vxrail manager is deployed on every cluster, and the reason we leverage a DELL vxrail manager is to be able to handle all of the upgrades, the patches. It basically looks at all of the software, all of the components that are VMware components, and also all of the hardware components, and does all the hard job for us. So with the DELL manager, we can literally go in. It's a friendly interface, and we can push the buttons for all of the upgrades, the patches. It keeps the house in order, basically. And every cluster that you deploy, you will have a vxrail manager in the cluster handling all of that for you. That is what makes our life easy and keeps the entire cluster under that validated state every single time.
Oke, baik. Thank you for your answer. Tentunya dengan vxrail manager ini memudahkan Bapak Ibu dan juga rekan-rekan dalam handling all of that, dan tentunya memudahkan sekali nih dengan adanya vxrail manager. Untuk I have another question for you. Okay. The question is, if I want to use the full VMware stack on vxrail, what do I need?
Okay, perfect question. So in order to use the full VMware stack, we're talking about VMware Cloud Foundation. With VMware Cloud Foundation, you will have the vSphere, the vSAN, the NSX for security, the NSX for network, and you will also have the vRealize suite to manage day 2 operations and to implement application provisioning automation, which is vRealize automation. In order to get VMware Cloud Foundation on vxrail, there's 2 ways we can do that. You can get a perpetual license, or you can get a subscription license. So you can decide what model makes more sense for you. If you are leveraging the subscription license, then there's 4 licenses. Perpetual or subscription, you get the basic, standard, advanced, and enterprise. With the subscription, the standard, advanced, and enterprise already include VMware Tanzu that allows you to run native Kubernetes in vSphere. So pretty much what you would get from GCP, AWS, or any cloud provider. So that's pretty much VCF on rail.
Okay, thank you so much Lu for your answer. Pak Ono, mungkin ada yang ingin didiskusikan atau ingin ditanyakan atau ingin ditambahkan?
Wow, to be honest, very inspiring presentation for me. I have a lot of questions in my mind, but I start with very simple question first, especially the VMware, what you call it, Tanzu. Does it means I can just copy the normal Docker container or Kubernetes and run it in the VMware? Is that what you mean, or do I need to install a certain operating system, or I don't need to install that?
So you don't need to install. When you run Tanzu, what is going to happen? There's two ways. You can run Tanzu with vSphere only, and vxrail, vSphere, vSAN, and Tanzu, or you can do Tanzu with VMware Cloud Foundation on vxrail. When you deploy Tanzu, what's going to happen is we are going to leverage infrastructure components that will be deployed automatic for you in order to be able to run and deploy a Kubernetes cluster. On the end of the day, as the developer, I am going to give you an IP address where you're going to send your API calls to, and you are going to have the same Kubernetes and native clusters that you would get in GCP, AWS, any of them will be deployed. There is two types of deployments that you can have. One is called a vSphere pod that was designed and implemented by VMware and has some components like the kubelet and so on running in the hypervisor. The vSphere pod is the VMware version. Now, if you would like to have a traditional Kubernetes cluster like you have in GCP, we have native TKGC. And TKGC is exactly the same as what you run on GCP. And then your YAML file is going to be, you know, whatever, when you choose to deploy the cluster, you're going to choose, you know, basically your configuration. And if you want to use Istio or, you know, any kind of sidecar, you are going to leverage the standard Kubernetes deployment. If you don't need any customization or any sidecars, you can do a vSphere pod. As the developer, you have choices on how that gets deployed, and that configuration is all done on your YAML file, and then you basically sending API calls to a control plane inside vSphere.
Wow.
Did I answer that?
Yes. It's cool. It's cool. I didn't realize.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. I didn't realize it can be so easy like that. Well, it's not easy, but yeah.
Let me tell you something, Mr. Ono, that one of the things that I love the most about VMware and Tanzu, right, is that they literally created an easy button to deploy Kubernetes for infrastructure people. I am an infrastructure admin. I know vSphere. I don't know anything about YAML files. I don't know anything about Kubernetes, but I know vSphere. Inside vSphere, there's a management workload tab. There are 8 steps that I will follow to deploy Tanzu and Kubernetes in my vSphere infrastructure. And I am going to see that and manage that through my vCenter. The best. It only takes 45 minutes to go from 0 to hero.
Wow.
And consume a container environment. 45 minutes. I cannot tell you. You can get any vendor, open source, you can get OpenShift, you can get Rancher, you can get anybody else out there. It is the Frankenstein. Anyone else coming into vSphere is going to Frankenstein the solution with Kubernetes to make it work. And in order to do that, it does not take 45 minutes, it takes days.
Yeah.
Days. I'm going to tell you guys one quick note. I did a POC against OpenShift. It was VMware and us against OpenShift, right, for a customer. we had from zero to hero, from my guys going into the data center, installing the hardware, to being able to send API calls and deploy Kubernetes clusters. 2 days. 2 days. From putting the hardware up, having the entire stack deployed, and the second day we could use the cluster. The developer could go in there and basically leverage whatever they wanted with their YAML files and play with it. The other guys, 16 days. 16 days. And this was a 10-node cluster. The other guys do not scale. That's the difference. When you think about vxrail, if I need more power, I literally take 15 minutes to install and add the node to the physical cluster. And from that point on, I can consume. That's it. So think about this. The COC that we did was for a big customer here in the US that does a lot of cartoons, design, they do a lot of rendering and stuff. So they leveraged a lot of the new design for the application and Kubernetes. And they need to scale at a moment's notice. We need to render this cartoon. We need to make this happen. Today, we need to be having a bigger cluster. The other guys are good for backyard play. If I want to be serious on an enterprise level, VMware with Tanzu on vxrail is the deal. Like, just think about the things that you can do, and technically speaking, right? So, and I'm speaking from experience from watching it, right? So the other, I don't know, I come from the infrastructure side. I am looking at what makes my life easier when I have to deploy Kubernetes, which is something that I don't know, right? But I need to get done. This makes it easy. 8 steps, 45 minutes, done.
Amazing.
Pretty cool. Yeah, it's
Yes,
pretty cool.
amazing. 45 minutes is amazing.
It is. It really is. And you know what's best of all? The entire networking part, if you are using VMware Cloud Foundation,
Yeah.
the NSXT is built for you. You don't touch it. As you build the clusters, you have reserved IP addresses for everything. You have blocks of addresses. Everything gets built. You don't touch anything. Literally follow the buttons and sit there and wait.
Oh, simple question. This is simple questions. The problem with us in Indonesia right now is AP address basically. We run out of AP address. And most of the guys, they don't want to learn about AP version 6. So the problem is many of us using IP version 4 and we run the public network using private IP. Do you have any comment or solution for those kind of? So basically, we run a private IP on public network. Do you have a comment on that? Like for your solution, like should we move into IP version 6, all of us, or can we keep the IP version 4 and run the system using IP version 4 for public?
So you can actually, when you think about the entire Kubernetes solution on Tanzu, right? You're only going to need the egress to be public. Everything else can be private. So as long as you have that egress on your load balancer, and it could be AV networks, or it could be any, obviously we want AV, but it could be anything that you want. Egress and ingress with the load balancers are going to be public. Everything else, actually the ingress is public, the egress could be private depending on how you do the design, right? And we can leverage NAT, and we can actually do everything else inside NSX and with the containers themselves, all private
net.
They need to all be IPv4, right? So it is your choice as a customer, and depending on what you have available, we can augment and cater the design accordingly to fit your environment and the availability that you have.
Wow.
And inside NSX and inside Tanzu with VMware, there's reserved private addresses that are used under the hood that you don't even see, so you don't have to worry about those either.
Okay. Thank you, Lou.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Oke, sudah cukup Pak Ono?
Wow, yeah, amazing.
Amazing. Right, I know it. So I think this is the Q&A session and it's over. So once again, I want to say thank you so much, Lu, for your presentations. It was very great and everybody in here say that too, ya. Pak Mr. Anthony said amazing presentation from both of you, Pak Ono and Luciana. Thank you so much. I want to give Kak Ono, terima kasih Pak, stay safe ya untuk Bapak Ibu dan juga Lu and Pak Ono, sekali lagi thank you so much. Untuk Bapak Ibu dan juga rekan-rekan, jika ingin sekali lagi mendapatkan presentasi tadi sudah disampaikan oleh Lu, jangan lupa juga untuk meng-email ya. Lalu tadi emailnya juga sudah di-share di kolom chat, jadi silahkan langsung mengirimkan emailnya untuk nanti kita